Meeting to open session and call to order at 6 o'clock. I just want to remind everybody that we are recording on the direction of the board and that may capture images and sounds of those attending the meeting. 4.2, report of action taken in closed session. There were no actions taken in closed session. And then we're so excited to be back live, and our two new board members, their first live meeting, so exciting. Thank you for being our audience. Attendance roll call, President Elkisham, aye. Clerk Lopez-Jones. Here. Trustee Maxfield. Here. Trustee Gonzalez. Here. Trustee Rothberg-Allen. Here. Excellent. Okay. If everybody will stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving on to the district mission statement, we are a collaborative, culturally rich educational community where a rigorous and innovative curriculum prepares our students to be successful contributors to our global society. 5.1 is public business from the floor on non-agendized items. This portion of the agenda allows an individual the opportunity to address the board on any item regarding board business that is not on the agenda. Without taking action or entering into a dialogue with the public, board members may briefly respond to statements made or ask clarifying questions about the topics posed by the public. Your matter may be referred to administration, and we limit individual speakers to 3 minutes. Do we have anything? Anybody? Okay. So then we will move on to 6.1, presentations. Alex Andre, who's our data and assessment support specialist, is going to present an overview of Calistoga Joint Unified School District map data. So exciting.
We started on that for the year review.
Oh,
We're going to do a couple things for you today.
You tell us.
Yeah.
This one you want?
Yep, that's perfect. Lovely, thank you. So we thought, in absence of engagement data, that I would give you a year in review. And we looked back at last year kind of in whole, looked at some enrollment numbers. We will, I'll tell you a little bit about where we got the data from. So this is a snapshot of Calistoga's enrollment last year. This data is collected and reported all throughout the year to the state reporting system. It's called CalPATS. And the entire Wildcat team participates in this data collection. Then they review it, we certify it, and that's when it eventually ends up on the dashboard. So we all have our hands in the pot with this data, and I'm just giving you a little preview. We're also, by sharing this data with you, as I share with administrators and different stakeholder groups throughout the year, it helps to build our data knowledge and really the language that we build around data and a collaborative nature in which we use data to improve outcomes for all of our students. So, our end of year data, we call it POI for short. I'm going to go over some cumulative enrollment. We'll look at some student groups, who our students are, a little bit on attendance, and a little bit on our 2021 grants. All right, and I always like to do when I'm sharing cumulative data, I like to do a little comparison. So I did a 3-year comparison here with our state data. Last year we had a total of 882 students enrolled throughout the year. Some students came and left at different times, but 882 was the total. And just a little bit lower than years prior. And please feel free to stop me at any time with questions. Then, what are the student group counts for Calistoga? So the state of California looks at different student groups when they're evaluating performance and engagement. So out of those 882 students, 78% of them were socioeconomically disadvantaged, 37% were English learners, we had less than 1% foster and less than 1% homeless, 15% students with disabilities, and then our reclass students, the students that started out as EL perhaps at the beginning of the year and then were reclassified throughout their years here at Calistoga, 40%. But if you look at that, that's about 77% English learner students in total, right? Students who originally spoke Spanish. absenteeism, right? It's 10%, the lucky number is 10%. So if students are absent 10% of their days enrolled, so if they're enrolled for 180 days and they're absent 18 days, they're chronically absent, right? So there's some definitions down there, but last year, I did the 3-year comparison, you can see that our numbers went down. And that has a lot to do with the way we took attendance last year, right? Engagement attendance was a lot different than regular attendance. You could pop onto a Zoom meeting for a couple minutes and get counted as present. So it went down about 3%. But then what I did on the side here is let's thinking about those 47 students who were chronically absent, how many of those days were excused and how many were unexcused? And I did a little average there for you. So 22 days unexcused for those students who are chronic absentees, and that's a lot. And excused only 4 days. So that means they had a parent's note or a doctor appointment. The other thing about chronic absenteeism, it's important to remember that any absent counts. If you're not in school, whether it's excused or not, it counts for not being present, right? It counts as a chronic absence. The other thing to remember as we think about the upcoming dashboard is that chronic absenteeism on the dashboard is only for K-8. Okay, this data is for K-12. We collected for K-12. We have the data and we can look at it, but on the dashboard it's only for K-8. That's in that slide. So, our 2021 cohort students who completed high school. So cohort students are the students that entered 9th grade 4 years ago and then graduate within that 4-year span. So we had a total of 64 complete high school. 2 of them were with a certificate and the rest were regular high school diploma. Of those graduates, 20 had the seal of bioliteracy, and that number has been going up increasingly every year, which is super exciting. We had 30 complete their A to G requirements, that's almost 50% of the class. And we had 75% of this cohort complete a CTE pathway, which is really awesome, and that number is going to steadily increase, I hope, over the next few years.
What's the comparison of the previous data on A to G?
I would have to pull that up for you. I would assume that those numbers are on the rise, Michael, but I'm not sure. We have to pull it. I can pull that.
That's okay.
That's something I can just shoot you an email. No problem. Yeah. And that's a little year in review. That's it. Any questions? We talked about enrollment, attendance, graduation information, some student group information. When I'm thinking about the student groups, as I've been working with Calistoga now in some capacity for about the past 5 years, and this looks pretty steady. This looks pretty true. Aside from that homeless number that we've seen kind of fluctuate, this looks about right. What we got coming here? All right.
So I do have a question.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that, the attendance was counted in a different way last year.
Yes.
So they can sign into Zoom and stay for 5 minutes
Yes.
and get counted.
Right.
So that makes me think, did that happen? I'm curious to know,
I'm sure it did happen. I wasn't present in all the classrooms, but I know that was, kind of the message that we got from the CDE as far as attendance goes, and then that was the messaging that we shared with staff as well.
But then they also have a lot of asynchronous work that they can.
Yes. So what we encouraged teachers to focus on last year was, it's important that we follow the rules that the CDE has given us for attendance. But the other important piece of engagement is the work piece, right? So are they doing the work, whether it's asynchronously or synchronously on the Zoom meeting? So it was a twofold as far as engagement goes last year.
What about when, like, for example, my kids went to school and then I got a phone call saying they were absent and they were in school. Sometimes the computer messes up. Is that taken into account?
Yeah, so before this data gets submitted to the state, we have a massive review process, not just with our teachers to make sure that everything's submitted and corrected, but then I work with the site secretaries, the attendance secretaries to make sure that everything's cleaned up, any sort of confusion or notes are taken into play, and then corrections are made before everything's sent up. And the crazy thing is I can't submit anything if there's any glitches in this data. I mean, one by one, day by day, numbers are sent out. And it's a very ridiculous process that we take part in for attendance. Anything else? Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, you're welcome. And we'll shift to math. Here we go. So, super excited to start math this fall. You know, the discussions are already on the table at both school sites. But we're going to look at spring results. And of course, as you always see in my presentations, we have the elephant here, which is my favorite little visual because we all play different roles in our school system, and it's important to remember that where we're coming from, we have our own perspectives from where we stand, and just take that into account when we're looking at data. And what I wanted to share with you today is the student math mantra, and we do this with our teachers, and we started to do it with the students for this spring math, and we did kind of a choral read. Well, that's what we do with the teachers, and I know that some of the teachers did this with the students. So the kids would say, data are numbers, and numbers will not make me feel bad about my learning and growth. Teachers will use math to identify my strengths and challenges and make a plan to help me learn and grow. Teachers use other info to support my growth. Math is only one piece of the Wildcat growth journey. And then everybody kind of just takes a minute to soak that in. So that's kind of what we're putting out there, and Kathy, you can attest to that. You know, it's not all about the score. We want them to experience growth, but there's a lot of pieces that go into that puzzle to help students learn and grow. Okay, this is a review for you guys. I know we talked about what a RIC score is. It's kind of like a scale score. It helps measure growth over time, just like that little growth chart. And really, what we're talking about here is shifting to that growth model. That the incremental growth over time will help us get closer to approaching or meeting standards like on the CAS, right? So every little bit counts. And when we focus on that individual growth and those individual skills, then we'll get closer to meeting that standard. But sometimes when we have that far off North Star, it's hard to even imagine how you'll get there without taking those little baby steps. So here we go, 97% participation for the spring, which is awesome. I think we're at 98 for the winter assessment. The number went up. Number of students tested 818. 688 of them were in person. 81% of the kids tested in person. Our virtual testers went up a little bit. That includes Wildcat Academy for the elementary, and then we offered a couple sessions of virtual testing for the high school. We had a few more no-shows, some of those seniors who were ready to be done and not test for the end of the year. Then what we did here on the right-hand side is something a little different. We wanted to share, and this will kind of be our new model from test to test, is how many students grew from one test to the next. How many students grew? So, from fall to winter, 36% of students met their projected growth, right? And then from winter to spring, 50% of students met their projected growth. More and more students are meeting their growth goals, which is really what we want to celebrate. And that was for ELA. For math, it was 28%, and then it jumped to 58%, 445 students meeting their projected growth goals. Which is so exciting. It gives you a little bit about what a growth projection is on the bottom there. It's all based on research that is nationwide from the NWA. This is growth by school, so you can kind of see how those cohorts grow across fall, winter, and spring. I bet you this one will like those. Okay. So along the top row, you'll see ELA. And you'll see the score for fall, winter, and spring at the elementary school. So you can see that score, that average score for all students going up. The little green star represents the normed average for all of those students. And then we have the high school, which is pretty steady, 221 to 222, and then also you have Palisades there. And then on the bottom you have math. We did do science in the spring, but just for junior high. So we're really excited about this year rolling out that math science. It'll be a great assessment, I think, 3 through 10. It's 3 through 10. Okay, so before we jump into these, I call them the rainbow slides. So the slides that we just looked at were growth model slides, talking about growth over time. The next slides that we're going to look at are going to be focusing more on achievement. So are kids meeting those standards? So on the top, the unhighlighted section, we have fall, winter, and spring, and then we have the performance bands, those achievement bands. The lowest being in red, and the highest being in blue. And then on the bottom, that gray band, we have math. So these are for all students who fell into those specific bands. If there are any observations, we know fall testing was tricky. It was the first time we ever implemented that. We had elementary go in person. We had fully implemented virtual testing for secondary for the fall. Winter, we started working out the kinks a little bit more. You know, proctoring this exam or this test has a huge impact on how students perform as well, how we plan to display it to them. Okay, what kind of work are we doing with math? Well, we had our spring parent night last year, which was super exciting. We had lots of engagement. I think we had over 30 folks on that Zoom call, 30 to 40 people. They all participated in data dives and conversations around performance and conversations around growth and what the math test is, what their kids experience when they're taking the math test. We also had all sites send home the math family reports, which is super exciting, and they go home translated as well. And we also shared some student growth strategies with parents, how to really support the kids and talk to them about math and growth. And then at school, we implemented something new. We had some test day slides that really informed the students why they're taking math and why their growth is so important. And we shared with them a little bit of their overall data and how we see them growing. And then they also had their own student worksheets where they could goal set and see if they did better or if they had some things to work on. So that was another engaging part. And then we did math celebrations at both sites, and we're going to continue to build on that work this year. And we're already in talks around, you know, how we're going to boost engagement on that. That's that. Any questions? Okay. Cool. Thanks, team.
Thank you, Alex. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to 7.1, we're looking at board policies and administrative regulations. So again, these are first readings, and all 5 of these are annual changes and recommendations from CSBA. Correct?
We are. Does the board have any questions about any policies? Okay, so we'll bring them back for a second read in the September meeting.
And 8.1, Michael is going to be able to ask.
All right, good evening. So first update is on AB 104, which was signed into law on July 1st by Governor Newsom. And it does several significant things we should be aware of. It addressed pupil retention, a pass, no pass option for some students, and exemption from local graduation requirements. These are set by the state. And I'll go through them a little more in detail. So with regard to pupil retention, it mandates that parents and students with deficient grades be offered consultation within 20 days of the school receiving a parent letter for retention. And it specifies what should be in the consultation meeting. We should describe to parents the available learning recovery options. We should review the student's academic and other relevant data. We should provide them with the research on retention, which is really, in general, a negative effect of retention on students. and provide parents with information on the positive effect of interventions and supports. And then retention decisions should be given to the parent within 10 days of consultation. So that's the rule around retention, and it's just a mandate that we respond to any parent request for retention with an in-person meeting or consultation. Pass, no pass option. Parents or guardians or an adult pupil can apply to have their letter grade for a course during last school year changed to pass or no pass grade on their transcript. There's no limit on the number or type of courses eligible for the grade change, other than that class must have taken place last year. So a student can apply to have a class in previous years changed, but for last school year, a parent or an adult pupil can have their grade change from letter grade to pass, no pass. The grades change will not impact the student's GPA or the eligibility for financial aid. CDE has compiled a list of universities that will accept amended transcripts. But we also tell families that there are universities, private universities, some public universities in California and outside that will not accept amended transcripts. And then also, the state has said that we will allow pupils who were off track for graduation at the end of last school year in the class of 21 or class of 22, so that will be last year's seniors or this year's seniors. If the student was off track at the end of last school year, they're exempt from our local board approved graduation requirements and may graduate with the state minimum, which is quite a bit lower. It's 130 credits, a very minimal standard. These same students have the right to complete the statewide graduation requirements, which could include a fifth year of high school. And this is a really small number of students for us. And this process will result in some consultations with the families. It's, depending on the student's goals, this could be a good thing or not, depending on where they're trying to go and if they need classes above and beyond the state. So this is significant. AB 104, that's affecting all districts in the state of California. And that's what it is: pupil retention, pass, no pass, and exemption from local graduation requirements. Any questions for me on that or how we're addressing it?
Is this limited to just Mosaic or Quebec?
Yeah, this is for just this year, like on the pupil retention issue, right? It's right now. The exemption from, or excuse me, the pass, no pass option is a 15, it's 15 days in the school year that the parents have the option to change a letter grade. So they have to make that decision here within 15 days. And then the exemption from local graduation requirements is last year's seniors and this year's seniors that would have that option. And who knows what the state might do next, but this is what we have right now.
Is there anything like in opportunities for that?
The year before, I don't know, and I can't speak to the state's rationale.
That was around the year.
Yeah, and I think too, this question of will they then extend it further? Do we have some unknowns about what this year looks like? But this is what we have right now. It's significant because the state has kind of taken some of the decision making away from the boards, and I think on grades from something that's traditionally thought as a teacher domain. The state has taken responsibility for that, probably for the right reasons. But regardless, it's something that we need to make sure we fully understand it and we implement it correctly.
So if we go to the state standard, which is a lot lower, I mean, of course, I guess somebody could abide by that and do it, but can you counsel to say, hey, this may not be the best?
Yes. I think that's exactly what's going to happen. Our counselor will meet with the student. It just really depends on the circumstance. If it's a student who, for example, who was off track to graduate, has no intent of making up those credits and wants to enter the workforce, this may be to their benefit.
Okay.
If it's a student that maybe got off track a little bit but really wants to apply to a UC, then this is not in their benefit. So it's something that really, for us, this is a small number of students who are off track, and Michelle will meet with those students and families and have those conversations. Yeah, we met with Raul and Mike and Michelle, and I think everyone at the site has a good understanding of what we have and how to move forward. Some other things I can share tonight. So we convened a social emotional learning planning team We outreached to our staff at the end of last school year and said, who's interested in being part of the team to discuss social emotional learning? We know that we've always tried to support social emotional well-being of our students, but it's even more important today than it's ever been. And the response from staff was pretty amazing. We had 13 staff members who stepped up and said, I want to be part of that team this summer. And so we met 5 times this summer. It was supposed to be 4, but they wanted to meet a 5th time to do some things. And then we met 3 additional times as part of the County Office of Education Social Emotional Learning Plan. And the team did a lot of good work. The general outcomes were that we'll continue the work we've been doing on restorative practices and trauma-informed practices. There's a desire to see some work around culturally responsive instruction, which, as you know, we've tried really hard to do. We've had some natural disasters and things happen that made us postpone that training. So it's definitely scheduled for this year, currently for the month of November. But the real emphasis of this team was to say, if we're going to teach students social emotional learning skills, then we need curriculum, right? It's one thing to have trauma-informed practices, restorative practices, which are good ways to make our campuses and classrooms safe and respond to situations, but if we're going to teach skills, we need curriculum. So the team identified curriculum, and then today we trained on those curriculums. It's really, really exciting to see that we'll have curriculum in place. The students will be getting instruction on those skills. So that's super exciting stuff. But a big thank you to a large group of people that invested a lot of time this summer. And then also, this summer, the Math Innovation team met. As you know, we had a study from West Ed, which really helped us take a look at ourselves and our math practices. And like any district, we have room for improvement. We have things we can do. And that study provided a lot of direction. And so this group came together this summer, which was our secondary math department, plus Margarita, who's the 6th grade teacher. And they developed a vision statement for the department. And they took this long list of recommendations from West Ed and kind of prioritized it. Said, what do we want to do next? What do we want to do first? And one of the parts of that discussion was, the early discussion was who's going to help us lead this work. We'll have an action item here with the contract, but we identified UC Davis as a partner in that work. And so heading into this year, I think the plan is to have 1 release day a month and have this team meet and really go deep into the work around our math department and strategize how we can improve our instructional methods for our kids. So other good work, and again, big thank you for the people who gave their time this summer. It was their time to come in and do this work. And then lastly, we kicked off the day today with our first district PD day. We had Aldea come back and join us for our 3rd training on trauma-informed practices. It was a really nice way to start the day. It was a nice way for our young people to reconnect and for us to know that as teachers, we've all been trained in how to teach content, but the work we're doing now, which is it's so important that we have a focus on social emotional learning. It's not work that all of us have been trained in. So for us to start the year this year, putting that in focus as the priority, I think it was meaningful. I think hopefully it models the work that we need to do with our students. So I think when we start the year with our students, we need to make sure that we're mindful of student well-being, and that needs to be important. We know that if kids don't have their needs met, then they can't do high-level academic learning. And our kids have been dealing with a lot of challenges these last 4 years. And then the second part of today was training on social emotional learning curriculum at each site. That went very well today, from my understanding, and very excited to see where it goes this year. So that's my report. Any questions on that?
Give an example of what trauma-informed practices include.
Sure. So, I think in general, as a generality, I think we're talking about behaving in a way that makes sure that our classrooms are safe places for kids. And making sure that how we act, how we interact with our kids makes it a safe place for students. And that's a generality, but as far as specific strategies, you could be talking about a classroom exercise to make sure that we take a moment to check in with students. I think something we'll see in our staff meetings, some of our leaders, adults, is as opposed to saying, welcome, let's go. Right? We've got a full agenda. I have a lot to teach you today, that teacher. One simple thing is just taking that moment to say, how are we doing? And that could be structured, a structured activity to find out how we're doing. Or it could be as simple as, how are we doing? Right? But that's really trauma informed, right? To make sure that we're behaving in ways as adults that's responsive to our kids' emotions and well-being.
It's also a two-way street, isn't it? For teacher and for student.
I think so. It's something we talked about today is, for one thing for kids, but for adults, we've been through a lot.
Yeah.
We've been through a lot. I mean, it's just, this world we've been living in these last 4 years has been very, very difficult. We need to make sure that we're in a good space to be able to do our work with kids. Being teachers challenging work, it's emotional work. You need to be in a good place in your interactions with students. Because if you're not in a good place, your students know it, they feel it, and it makes you less effective. So it's worth our time, I think. We spend time on these things, it takes time away from other things. We train instruction strategies. But I think it's worth our time. It makes things better and it makes the instruction better at the end of the day.
You enjoyed it? I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
How was it? How did you like it?
Oh,
It was good?
It's like asking them how it's going and then there's silence. But that's okay, then tomorrow I'm gonna ask it again, and next week I'm gonna ask it again. So maybe on the day when we are having really that day, I know she's gonna ask. I know she is. So that's all I've been doing it.
Thanks, Michael. Thank you for everything. Anything else for the moment? Maybe I'll do more things.
Yeah, just so that the audience knows, our director of business is ill tonight, so that's why she's not in attendance. But I included her very detailed report. It's in the board agenda packet, so if you'd like to see what she was going to report on tonight, it's included. I did want to highlight, though, the opening paragraph that she wrote is important, and that is that, our budget was passed, our state budget, and then there were trailer bills that were also approved on July 9th. And the good news is that there is lots of money, in the state budget that's being directed to education. So we're all very, very grateful for that. However, as a community-funded district, we will be receiving some of those monies, but not all of those monies, because some of them do not go to community-funded districts. So even though we're not going to receive the monies, we still are going to be held to the requirements of all of those new programs. And so Maureen and I were talking, and we've both been in this business a long time now, that this is like we're reverting back to the days where we had categorical programs. And we both remember a time when there were 40 to 50 different, funding streams that you had to keep track of. There were requirements for all of them, different reporting requirements. And so we feel like we reverted back to that now as a state. We're kind of moving away from that LCAP model where it's local control funding and going back to here are all these different funding streams and here are the parameters. So it's going to be a shift again. My biggest concern is as we make that shift, it's a tremendous amount of work on your business office because you're trying to keep track of all these different funding sources. And they're also requiring that each one of those, we have to get a lot of community and staff input, which is great, but it takes an enormous amount of time to do that. Whereas when you just have one particular pot of money or a few pots of money, it doesn't take quite as much time. So it will be definitely a burden on the business department and you're trying to keep track of all these funding sources. That's Maureen's report. But please do read what's written in the agenda. Thank you. Well, as we were walking in, our new trustees, Trustee Gonzalez and Trustee Rutherford Allen, this is their first time in person, so I'm pleased to have you in our boardroom. Somewhat normal, I guess. And Michael talked a little bit about this morning. It just felt fantastic to see everybody together again, and I think everybody was in a really positive mood, happy to see one another. They're really happy to see the students on Thursday. And I mentioned in my welcome back letter last week that the district is not quiet in the summer. People always, as they're going by the district office, say, have a great summer and hope you get to relax. Well, the district was a beehive of activity this year. It was incredible because we expanded the summer program so much. So there was a lot of hands on deck. I'm very appreciative of every single person that worked in the program. Michael led the charge, leading the district with that. We had outstanding staff, and I think both kids and parents were pleased with the program overall. There were other people in the district that I also gave credit to in my welcome back letter. That was facilities department, thank you, Chris, and his crew. Food services, they're an amazing team. Our tech department was on board, having to assist with summer school. And then we had volunteers. Michael ran many interview panels this summer. And so every time he conducts an interview, we have a panel of members who sit on there. That takes their time. The math innovation team, Kathy's a member of that. And then as Michael mentioned, the SEL curriculum committee. So the dedication of our staff is what makes it such a special place for me to work and special for our kids. So under LCAP goal number 1, ensuring academic excellence for all students. As I've shared with you in the past, research has shown the biggest influence on a student's academic achievement is the teacher and the quality of their instruction. And so I want to publicly commend Michael for continuing to conduct. He's doing a great job in our hiring process. We're ensuring that we're adding only superstar teachers to our team. In addition to that, we've been hiring some fantastic support personnel. So I'm really excited about the year ahead, but it takes a tremendous amount of time to conduct that process. You have to post all these positions, you have to conduct the interviews, you have to do the reference checking, and then you have to do the whole employee onboarding process. So lots and lots of time. Both Michael and Melinda Mendoza, she is our HR assistant, and she invested in this as well. So I appreciate that. Then I want to let you know that I met again with Steve Rasmussen and his wife Felicia. And then we also met with the representatives from the Napa Conservation District. And we are still moving forward with the development of the outdoor education program at the Horn Canyon. And we're in the very beginning stages right now. We're just starting to plan out when we're going to try to implement things. Steve and his wife have already donated $50,000 to the RCD. And the intent that that money is going to be used to help pay their staff to develop lessons, to actually give the lessons when the students visit the property. And our next steps are to get the RCD staff together with our teachers to begin planning lessons together. So at this point in time, we're thinking that the pilot program will be our 4th grade, because they don't want any outdoor ed right now. Our organic gardening class, and then also the Palisades students. So starting out small and then expanding it next year. So the intent is that we'll have kids on that property in the spring. There's still quite a bit of work to be done actually on the property. Steve's made an amazing amount of progress, but we still need to do some more work to have kids are safely to visit. I also met with Bobby Frioli. I don't know if you all know her, but she's the executive director of the Brandon Center. And we were just meeting to discuss the district's future use of that center. They're being very mindful that they want to include our students in using that facility. So the seating capacity is going to be fairly small, probably 130 students max, which is not huge, but it'll be very nice theater seating, great sound system. So we talked about potential for future drama productions. We talked about small assemblies. That could hold a couple grade levels for us. Displaying student artwork, and then possibly having our culinary class utilize the professional kitchen to help when there's productions. They would actually cook the meals or the appetizers for the productions. So their next step is they're hiring a company that specializes in making a plan for use of a community center. And so she's asked that I meet with the person who they've hired, so I will do that next few weeks, just to kind of give an idea of where we see the district's use going for the Brandon Center. Under LCAP goal number 2, providing a safe, healthy, and positive school environment, the principals and I met with Chief Celaya and our new SRO, Officer Sam, because we wanted to review the duties of the SRO, just so that we were all on the same page, because this is a new position to the district, and it's also new to the police department. So she has committed to, she will be on both campuses during the course of the school day. She may not be here, every single day because she also will still maintain some of her duties as a patrol officer. But her schedule is 4 days a week. So the intent is for her to be on campus at some point during each of those days for 4 days. She has an office here at the junior senior high school. It's a small office, but house her fine. And then she will have to also be, if there's some kind of emergency, she will be pulled from us. But she'll be doing some education with students, tobacco prevention education. She'll be a presence during breaks and lunches. She'll be here for after-school activities, sporting events. So she'll be able to flex her day a little bit so that when we need her, she'll be available to us. So I'm excited about the position. I'm very grateful to Chief Solaya for writing the grant and funding her. So we are not making any kind of a financial contribution to the position. Then under LCAP goal number 3, increasing parent engagement and enhancing communication. Monica Garibay started in her new position as our family and community liaison. We are very excited to have that position on our site. She is actually housed here in room C, so it's accessible by the public for her to be able to meet with families. And she has been working hard to learn the new Parent Square app so that she can assist parents in signing up for that if they're not comfortable with technology and haven't used the application before. So the administrators meet this next Tuesday, and we're going to prioritize what we would like her to do within the first couple weeks of school. Very excited to have her on board. And then as you are aware, we've recently implemented Parent Square. This is our new communication system that replaces Aries communication. And Paula has been managing the implementation of it. She actually just sent out another notification to parents. And we're hoping that Monica will really help with that. So I think it'll be a smooth transition. And then she's already, in her role, been updating when we get a bounced email from parents, because sometimes parents forget to update their emails or their cell phone numbers. She's able to immediately call the parent and update that within the system. So that alone has been tremendous help to us. Just out of that. And then I want to remind you that our district's Welcome Back Luncheon is tomorrow. It's at noon. It'll be done by 1:15. We're going to be celebrating the start of school out on the quad here. We have a taco truck coming in so that our food services staff can also take a break for the day and be served for the first time themselves. So I hope you join us. It'll be terrific. You'll get to meet our new staff too. We have lots of new staff, so I will be introducing you. And that's all. Questions?
We will move on to the consent agenda. So just a reminder, actions proposed for the consent agenda are deemed routine in nature and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless any member of the board, audience, or staff requests specific items to be removed for separate action. So, if anybody doesn't have any questions, I'm looking for a motion to go ahead and approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain. A roll call vote. President Epperson, aye. Clerk Lopez Jones. Trustee Maxfield.
Aye.
Trustee Gonzalez.
Aye.
Trustee Rockford Allen. Aye. Perfect. Okay, that brings us to the fun stuff, action items. So just protocol for action items include staff presentation, questions from the board, public input, deliberation by the board, and voting by the board. During public input, there will be a 3-minute time limit per person. So let's talk about district COVID safety.
So the district superintendents have continued to meet with the health officer and the private school principals as well throughout the school summer. So we've met weekly, and the intent of that is just, we've been, of course, keeping track of the pandemic and to plan through what we want our protocols to be. So for the most part, protocols are pretty similar throughout the districts in the county. So I've included those within the agenda for you to look at. These are the same protocols that we had last year. We did omit a couple of protocols. One of them is we no longer requiring that staff fill that out every morning. And we're also not having parents complete that form at the beginning of the school year. So that's one of the things that we deleted. However, the rest of those are all protocols that you've seen before and that we've been following very carefully, safety of our staff and students. However, the other inclusion that the NAPCA districts are doing is they are asking their employees to attest to whether or not they have been vaccinated. And then also they're asking parents of students who are over age 12 to also attest to whether or not they've been vaccinated. So the form has 2 boxes on it. I attest that I haven't been vaccinated or my child has. Or the second option is decline to disclose. So that is important because if a child or a staff member is showing signs of COVID, there are 2 different protocols for how we contact trace and the quarantine period. So that would aid us if we knew that information. So I am requesting that we include that in our protocol so that we can
Obviously not.
absolutely.
And then is there a process in place if someone's quarantined other than their school?
I'll let Michael talk
Oh,
about
okay,
it.
no, that's okay, and you might be talking
Yeah,
about
no.
it.
Could you repeat that?
So if we do in fact quarantine somebody, how are they going to have the option to do Zoom school or?
Sure, so, just to go through the rules a little bit.
Yeah.
One of the changes we know is that for individuals who've been vaccinated, if you have known exposure or close contact, you no longer need to quarantine, and that's significant. So that means if I'm a teacher and I've been vaccinated and I have close contact with someone who has COVID, I can continue to be at work and teach. So if we're talking about someone going home, then it's probably a staff member who's unvaccinated who has an exposure. Or probably more likely, we still do have some protocols in place, the same protocols from last year with regards to COVID symptoms. So if you have COVID symptoms, you're going to be at home for 10 days or until you have a negative COVID test. In that case, with teaching staff, especially certificated staff, we try repeatedly to find ways to engage them so they can continue to work from home rather than take leave. There is some additional COVID leave from the from the state available through September, but even then our certificate staff haven't really utilized it because we've had ways for them to teach. What I would anticipate is if a teacher were to have to be at home, they can still teach their class, teach it remotely via Zoom. We would have a substitute teacher in the classroom to supervise the students. I think we still get the expertise of our teachers teaching and leading the class, and the teacher doesn't have to utilize their. So that's what I would anticipate. For students, yeah, so students have some options. Students they're gonna have access to work like they always would when they're sick, right? So you have the ability to do the work that was assigned to you. I think because of the increased use of technology, our students are gonna have greater access than ever to their assignments in the classroom. And I think last year, teachers were provided with webcams, and there was a lot of practice of students being able to simultaneously Zoom into a class. And while that wouldn't be required of a teacher, that's another tool in the teacher's tool belt of how to serve those students.
All right. So is there any questions? Okay, then I'm looking for a motion to approve the COVID safety protocols as presented.
And Julie, that would be with the addition of the, that I just asked about. So you can, the motion would be on that.
With the addition of, sorry.
Yes.
Go ahead. Okay. Perfect. So we're looking for a motion to approve the addition.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So now moving to agreement with California Department of Public Health.
So this California Department of Public Health has received funding to contract with various vendors throughout the United States to provide testing services to school districts free. So there's going to be no cost for any district if they want to take advantage of that. And we, as districts, get to select which particular vendor we want to use and exactly what method of testing that we want to use. So I'm recommending that we contract with Concentric. And again, they're contracting directly with CPH. And Concentric would be conducting pooled testing once a week for grades K through 6. And pooled testing is a little bit different in that you are having every child in the classroom do a self-swab, so they're taught how to do that. And then they take their swabs, all 24 of them, and they put them into one vial. The teacher can put their swab in there as well. And then that vial is sent off, and in 18 to 24 hours it comes back, and they can tell whether or not you had one person in the classroom who's testing positive for COVID. If that's the case, then you administer antigen testing to every single child or the adult to see, in fact, who is infected. It requires parent permission, you can't just test with permission. And the other advantage to it is it's less expensive for the state, so you're not unnecessarily testing everybody with antigen testing, only those that are required. So I think it's a efficient thing to do. It allows you to continually check your school population to make sure that nobody's impacted. They suggested that we start with the elementary grades because all of our class sizes are 25 or less, and each sample is 25 total people, adults or students. If we chose to later, we could expand it to the other grades. And remember, our little ones are the ones that are not vaccinated. So I'm recommending this. I think it's efficient. And I think it's a safe thing for us to do. Stay on top of COVID cases. Questions about the process?
So is it random? Or is it, so you just take every classroom?
You test every classroom every week. They will go up to 2 tests a week if you in fact feel that there is a surge in your community or a surge in your schools. They won't test any more than 2 tests. And the other advantage right now to this is that the state is recognizing that small districts in particular, we do not have the staffing to manage this kind of a program. We have a consultant nurse, that's it. So it's almost impossible for us to do that on our own. So they will actually pay for a consulting nurse to come in to the site, and then also an administrative assistant to come in and help manage the gathering of the tests and the ordering of the tests. And so that's a tremendous benefit to particular small districts. So I don't see any downside to it.
What about the parents who want their kids tested?
Yeah, it does require permission. And we hope that we do a good job of educating parents to see that this is a benefit to everybody, to their own family as well as the entire school community. And the company has done this a lot already. And so they provide sample letters that our school nurse can use to send home for parent education. And then of course we also have our consulting nurse available who's got a good relationship with a lot of her families. And she also will be available to answer questions for them, as well as the consulting nurse that comes into the school.
What happens when there's a positive test and the pool testing while we're waiting for the results of the individual testing? What happens to that class?
Yeah, you would not, I don't think we'd send them home like, better than that.
Well, I think the next step is the quick read test. So,
The problem with that is it doesn't, it comes back in, say, 18 hours. Yeah, we can do the quick read. So we have the rapid antigen test on campus. They give us 120 of them. So we could test them out.
yeah, and that's there is, in addition, there are new quarantine rules for students at school. Those students are in masks. Even if they've had close contact, students can remain in school if they're symptoms free. So they have modified the quarantine process. You might be able to give some allowance to get that process done.
Okay, just looking for a motion to approve the agreement with CTH.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And then going on to 10.4, consolidated application.
So you see this document every year. This is the document that generates our categorical monies. And so listed within the action there is the 4 different categorical monies that we receive each year. This part of Title I is actually what funds our academic intervention specialists of the elementary school. I do want you to note, however, that every year this money has lessened, unfortunately. And that's due to federal funding has decreased, and also our free reduced lunch counts have come down a little bit, so that's an impact on us.
Looking for a motion to go ahead and approve the consolidated application.
Okay.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
So I take this report will get bigger, right?
Pardon me?
With categorical increasing, the report will get bigger.
They're supposed to get there?
No, well, did you just say, with all the new categorical coming from the state, that
Yeah, I'm not sure whether or not the Title I, 2, 3, and 4 will increase or not. There'll be different categoricals.
would that be part of this?
I'm not sure yet. Maureen and I are still trying to figure out all the funding streams.
Work in progress.
Exactly.
Okay. So then we're at 10.5, and Michael's going to share with us the initial sunshine proposal from CAT.
Well, I have ours. I don't know, Kathy, do you want to speak to 10.5?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you want, oh, sorry. We have the sunshine agreements between CAT and the district. I can speak to ours. Do you want me to speak to yours, or would you like to speak to it?
I can pull it,
It's
speak
a-
to it, or you can't do it. I think it's pretty general.
Okay, I'll go for it.
Same.
So we have both the openers here from CAT and from the district. And, you know, I think both have a level of specificity in them that you can read them and understand the items that are going to be negotiated. You know, I think we have a contract that works. I think at this point, both the district, I think CAT, that we're looking to refine and look for those places to make things work better. And just as far as process goes, I can say I'm really looking forward to it. Our bargaining team is the same group of people, and I think by and large theirs is too. So we get to work together year after year, and I think that's a good thing. I think it helps us build trust. I know we're looking to be effective and as efficient as possible. And I think the biggest shift this year is we've had a little bit of a history these last several years of negotiating a little bit later in the year, which is fine. It's kind of fine for the negotiating team, but then it becomes very challenging for the business department and payroll to kind of make these adjustments. I think it's probably hard on Director of Business Services to understand the budget without knowing where things are going. So I think we're trying really hard, both sides, to negotiate earlier this year. And so this is impressive, right? We are sunshining in August. This is good. And I think our intent is to start negotiating pretty soon. We've got some dates on the calendar, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure they are too. That you know, it's good to spend time together and work on these important things.
Great. Everybody review? Yes, feel comfortable? Okay. So first, I'm looking for approval for the initial proposal from CAT.
So,
All in favor?
Aye.
And then, I don't think we need to share anymore, right? And whatever, so I'm looking for the approval of the sunshine proposed by us to CAT. Unless you want to go over it more, we all have this. I'll take Stephanie. You want to say it? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and then we get to the fun stuff. Michael's going to go over our master bell schedule. Exciting.
Sure, I do this on behalf of Raul here. So you have the bell schedule, which really harkens back to 1920, pretty much the same bell schedule. That's good. I think it's a sense of normalcy for students to be able to return to that. It's got the 0 period there. It's got advisory. So very similar to 1920, and I know it all works closely with Maureen to make sure that we have the required instructional minutes for the state that we've met our minutes. And then you have the full master schedule there that I won't go through in detail, but it gives you a good understanding of which teachers are teaching what. And again, pretty similar really to last year. The big shift probably being able to go back to that traditional schedule and in-person learning experience for students.
I just have a question about the timing. Why are the times so strange?
Yeah.
Is that to make sure you get the instructional minutes?
It is. But we have, after the first few weeks, the teachers and students, they get it. It does take a minute. Yes, the 23s and the 04s and this.
However, I suggest posting it on your refrigerator. I know. Okay, everybody's understanding that, I'm looking for a motion to approve the bell schedule.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then that moves us to the agreement with the All Foundation for Educational for Professional Development.
So,
Is that right?
yeah.
Okay, good.
That was good.
That was good. I love white.
We have had a multi-year investment in restorative practices, starting first at the elementary school, second at the secondary school, and that work started, but it really kind of got paused a little bit with COVID and our inability to kind of do this very in-person work. So as we look to really finish out our restorative practices training at the junior senior high school, there was a call from some staff to look at a different provider, and feeling like the style of another provider might match with their needs at the junior senior high school. And so versus what we did at the elementary school, this is work with Koala. It's really Linda Inlay, who's a former principal in Napa County, who now does this work around restorative practices and listening. So this is a contract really for this restorative practices training for staff.
Questions? Okay, we're motion to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, then we're moving on to agreement with UC Davis for professional development.
And as I said, moving from the West Ed study that had recommendations to bringing those recommendations to fruition, we know we need leadership and we know we need expertise. And UC Davis is a top-notch organization for providing leadership around mathematics instruction. This is a contract for them to provide professional development during the summer and during the school year.
Questions? Okay, looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on to 10.10, agreement with second step grades K through 6 emotional learning curriculum.
So this is the curriculum that our social emotional learning planning team identified for the elementary level. And if you know Second Step, it's been around for a long time. It used to be kind of the go-to SEL curriculum years ago. At some point, SEL felt a little old. The videos that they showed had people, with attire from the 80s. but Second Step was always good. It was always good. It got a little cliche maybe, but it always had great lessons, great content. And they've updated their platform. It's an all-digital platform. It's been completely resurfaced. But at its core, when we looked at a lot of curriculum, and we had 4 different providers do live presentations from us. At the end of the day, Second Step simply had the best lessons, the most student-centered, engaging lessons for students, and really ease of implementation. And so we are recommending this for adoption at the elementary level.
Looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? on to Project Wayfinder for grades 7 through 12 for SEL curriculum.
And this is the curriculum that our SEL team has recommended for the secondary level. So much to like about this program. I think many of the SEL programs are rooted in elementary and brought up, and they feel elementary. But you need a program that's, that really has its roots in secondary. It's going to resonate with an 11th grade student, with a 7th, 8th grade student. And this program really has that. It's designed by the Stanford Design School to address the increase really at the college level in social, emotional, and mental health issues they were seeing, and then brought down from there. But it really feels like it's very relevant to our students. And the activities and lessons are thought-provoking and well-developed. And I think if you put that in the hands of our teachers, they're going to do some really great things with our students. And they have a great support, great professional development that we had today. It was, I think, really, really good, and we're going to get a lot of hands-on support during the rollout. And so we're recommending this for our social emotional learning curriculum for our secondary students.
So it's the same 13-person team that picked over them, it was a mixture of elementary.
It was the same group, and then when we looked at curriculum, we looked at them all together. And at some point in that process, there was a determination that access was really important, and you needed curriculum that students could access. And it was okay with the team if it ended up being 2 different curriculums, because the elementary kids need something that really is different than what secondary is. It would have been nice to have one, but access is important.
Okay, looking for a motion to approve Project Wayfinder. Second. All in favor? Great. So now we are looking at the agreement with the Solano County Office of Ed for Labor Law Consortium Roundtable.
Yeah, Solano County Office of Ed meets monthly with human resources directors from the North and East Bay, with an attorney from the F&F law firm. So this is an agreement for me to join that, for us to have a district representative join that. So it should be good for us to have to network with other HR directors. And actually, I think there's a cost to this. I think there's actually cost savings. As we would have to reach out to our legal counsel on certain issues, we're going to have legal counsel through this, and the ability to have answers to questions that we didn't even know existed before we hear from others before they get ours.
They sort of specialize in it rather than have a county office of Ed.
Yeah, I don't know. It's at Solano County, and so it does. There are HR directors from Napa County, but it goes down to Solano County, Contra Costa County, so it kind of captures that part of the Bay Area.
So looking for a motion to agree to the labor law consortium roundtable. Second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, that moves us on to our county-wide expulsion.
So all county offices in California are required to support districts when they have expelled students. So this is a plan that you approve every 3 years. Any questions about it?
Okay, then I'm looking for a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay, and now we are finalizing the 10.14 board policies that we reviewed last meeting. So this is all straightforward. Just looking for a motion to go ahead and approve these.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Great. A lot of action tonight. Exciting. So closing items, just everybody check your schedule, make sure that everybody's available for our upcoming board meetings. If not, just let us know, so we can make sure we have everybody present that we need there. And then tentative future agenda items, summer program report, which will be exciting. And less exciting than Don't tell her I said that. And our student representative induction, that'll be exciting. There's no need for us to reconvene in closed session, and so I'm looking for Jeff's favorite motion.
All right, let's adjourn the meeting.
Second?